Hello guys, Ryan Ho back with my video. Today we have a very special headphone. This headphone basically sounds like speakers because it actually places its drivers really far in the front. And it's pretty crazy because if you kind of look at this, the drivers are in literally the front corner of the headphone. Normally they're over here on the side, but this one they positioned it in the very front to give it a very speaker-like type of sound presentation. So really, I think that is the most unique part about this headphone and what makes it special. So this is the Drop Grell OAE1. And this is actually the, I guess, production version of this headphone. They did a limited edition run of 1,000 of these, and this is their kind of production run. It's actually cheaper than it was before. It's retailing for about $300, but you can find on sale from anywhere from $300 to $200 right now. And yeah, for this price, it's honestly really compelling. It is actually a very special headphone because not only does it kind of have a speaker-like presentation, but it also has a lot of bass for an open back headphone. As you can see, the cups, this is definitely open back design, but you can definitely hear just how much bass it really has. It actually goes really low, really deep into the sub bass and bass, and you can feel all of the notes. So it's pretty special because they designed this to pretty much be like front firing speakers, but also having deep fun bass. So if you're kind of bored of your open back headphones that have flat or no bass, this thing is definitely going to impress you a lot because of how well it hits down low. And I feel like that is probably the second best aspect about this headphone. And I would say the third thing that makes this headphone special is that these drivers are actually biodynamic drivers, which is very special because a lot of these biodynamic drivers are used to play, well, bass and have a very natural type of sound is what a lot of people kind of associate with these type of drivers. But also, if you're looking in like the speaker world, a lot of these biodynamic drivers are used to play a lot of deep bass notes because they're just really good at kind of moving air and kind of making bass, right? So this thing definitely has that dynamic presentation. So I always say this, but you know, if you go to like a movie theater and you kind of feel the sound waves, this is pretty much the type of effect that you get with these biodynamic drivers from Grell. I mean, I feel like these are really the kind of upgrade I was kind of looking for. So right here we have the Sennheiser HD58X. This is kind of Sennheiser's main line of headphones. And Axel Grell is actually used to work at Sennheiser, but he decided to go and make his own headphone. But the thing is, I really find that the Sennheiser headphones are very optimized for kind of cleanliness, detail, not that much bass. And they never really played bass that well, and they never really had that much of that kind of punch, that like slam, that type of like dynamic feeling that you get from, you know, a really nice bass headphone. These headphones just never really had that type of feeling. And even the newer stuff I've listened to, the Sennheiser HD620, they never really had that like impact that you get from the Grell. I feel like the Grell headphone, they really kind of chose a really nice driver that really can make you feel the music. And I feel like that's the biggest difference between this headphone and the previous Sennheiser, is that the driver is just much more like active, fun. You can feel these stuff like move. And I feel like that in combination with its speaker-like presentation really just kind of engages you and focuses you and kind of immerses you into the environment, into the music, whether you're playing games or listening to music. You really feel like you're kind of there, right? And I feel like that's the thing that kind of makes this headphone stand out from the crowd, is that type of immersion effect that it has. And yeah, let's dive into details of this one. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. This is a really cool headphone. We'll talk about the good things, and we'll talk about some of the, I guess, not so good things about it as well. And then you guys can make your decision whether you guys want to purchase this or not. So when it comes to actually the build and the fit of this, I actually learned about this from reading about the signature one, which is the kind of limited run edition of this. They actually had, I guess, made some changes to it. So they made the paint all black apparently. But another thing they did was they actually loosened the clamping force on this headphone because it clamps very tight. And I'm actually surprised because honestly, when I put this on, this thing clamps really tight. Like it's really tight on your head. It's like trying to pop your head like a balloon, to be honest. So it definitely get some type of, you know, getting used to, or you can just stretch the band a little bit to loosen it up. But I would say it has a very tight clamping force, and they kind of loosened it since the first one, but it's still very tight. So I could only imagine the people had to deal with for the first run of this. Now, The other thing is the padding, right? So this padding is actually removable, so you can obviously replace this eventually. But this padding is pretty sufficient to me. I didn't really have any issues with it. It's this nice kind of faux leather type of feel. I feel like it makes it kind of have a more premium look than the kind of all plastic kind of cloth feeling of the previous Sennheiser. So I feel like it's a very good kind of move. So it has this extension method that is very reminiscent of like, I guess like AirPods Pro, where it's just like a tension mechanism where you can kind of move it up and down. So I find it very honestly easy to move. And there's actually little like tabs on the inside of this, if you can kind of see. But the tabs in there can kind of help you kind of align it on both sides. So I kind of use those to kind of figure out where I want to put it. So I feel like that was kind of a nice or a useful tool to kind of figure out the length of it and kind of match them on both sides. So this headphone can obviously move in all the directions. So you got your pivot and your swivel. So it guarantees that you're going to have a nice comfortable fit on it. So that was also a good kind of addition on this headphone, which, you know, the previous Sennheisers, I mean, they kind of had a little bit, I guess, but it wasn't as major as this one. So you have all the necessary adjustments to make it comfortable. And then we have the cup right here. So the cup right here is interesting because it's an open back headphone, but it has the obvious little baffle on the inside that kind of prevents the vibrations. And then we have this kind of cup. And I mean, it feels like metal. And it feels kind of very similar to, honestly, the Sennheiser HD58X. They have the same type of like grill, like metal type of material on there. So it's very familiar. And then, of course, we have the velour cups that are kind of pretty much well known from Sennheiser. They love the velour type of ear pads. And, you know, we have the same type of velour ear pads by Grell as well. So this is pretty comfortable. You're not going to have any hot spots in the sense of like, you know, leather gets your ears hot. These are a little bit more breathable, but I would say these are also pretty thick too. They do get slightly warm for me as well, but overall, I would say it's a really, really nice, kind of robust and cool design. Now, the other thing about this headphone is the cable, right? So the cable, you can obviously actually plug it in on either side and it will work. So that's a kind of nice addition that this headphone has. I feel like that's the new trend in like 2024. Honestly, a lot of headphones are kind of have that ability to do that. And then if you kind of look at the actual, I guess, cups and how the kind of ear pad is designed. So one of the interesting things about this is they kind of made it, I guess you could say, easily adjustable. So I can actually pull this out and you can actually see the driver inside. So you can see my nice driver. So this is kind of the dust cover. It doesn't really change the sound that much, to be honest. It's pretty much imperceptible. So it's just there to kind of prevent your driver from getting dirty, to be honest. And then actually you can see the driver, and the driver is actually kind of covered in this felt material. This felt material is honestly used to kind of curb the treble. I actually heard this headphone on when it first came out, and it was pretty trebly at CanGen when they're kind of testing it out, the prototype, but I guess they added a felt onto it afterwards to kind of make it less bright, because I think a lot of people found it bright, including myself. Now the pads itself can also be removed, so you can kind of just pull and they kind of come out from the clips. And then you can remove the pads. So then now you can actually see your full-on driver. So the driver, like I said, it has this front firing type of effect, and that's really cool. So really, if you look at it, it kind of sits in front. So it's like when you're listening to your headphones like this, and it kind of points at your ear, which is very different from, you know, conventional type of headphones. But the cool thing about the design is that because the AirPad's so big, it doesn't look weird, right? It just looks like a normal headphone from the outside. But like, you know, if it didn't have such a thick pad, you would see this like driver just like hanging out, which I thought was pretty funny. But I feel like they did a good job making this look like a normal headphone, even though it has a unique design on the inside. But yeah, my prediction is, I mean, a lot of people are probably going to take this felt off if they want more treble. I feel like if you took it off, you can probably get a little bit more like treble, because I feel like the one aspect about this headphone really is that it's kind of dark. I feel like that's probably one of the cons about this headphone, is that a lot of the treble above like 6K is kind of just not there, and it's a lot just pretty much like very subdued, so you're not getting a lot of the notes up there, but you're getting a lot of like the lower treble and it's part of the mid treble notes, but around 6K and higher, you're really missing a lot. And so I feel like this is kind of a place where you could technically adjust it if you wanted to, but obviously this is glued on. So if you took it off, it's kind of, you know, irreplaceable, I guess, or you have to re-glue it somehow. So yeah. So how does it sound? Honestly, the most impressive thing about this headphone is the bass. The bass goes so deep in the sub bass, and you have really good mid bass as well. It's just a very boosted bass, something I did not expect. I feel like it's something a lot of people didn't expect, because a lot of the previous type of Sennheisers were pretty much flat bass, and then they had to roll off in the sub bass. And I mean, their newest headphone, the 660S2, pretty much has less sub bass roll off, but it still has a little bit. Versus I feel like this headphone, just like, you just get all the sub bass that you want, very deep sub bass, and then you get boosted sub bass, boosted bass. It just like hits hard, punches hard. It's like a completely different headphone. Like, this headphone sounds more like your consumer type of headphone with the bass, so it just like has a lot there you won't be missing, and you'll honestly enjoy the bass a lot on this headphone. I feel like this is the type of tuning that, you know, the average consumer is going to like a lot more than the hardcore audiophile who wants just like flat bass. I feel like that's the most exciting part about this headphone, and the part that I think shocked a lot of people who are really into this headphone. They were just shocked by how much bass it has, because I mean, I feel like there's a different like mentality. Like, sometimes the hardcore audiophiles are really into that flat bass is like neutral, and that's like what music should sound like. And then there's like the new tunings, which all have a lot of bass, because they're saying, a lot of people are saying basically you need more bass to emulate speakers, because you got to be able to feel the bass, honestly, and that gives you the perception of like more bass if you can like feel it and hear it. So having a boost in the bass kind of gives you more of that feeling, and that flat bass just doesn't deliver in that type of aspect, and I honestly agree with that as well. So the bass is definitely really good on this headphone. The mid-range on this headphone is also really good, very present, very forward. It does remind me a lot of the HD like 6XX type of sound. You're really getting a really forward mid-range that's really good. It's very comparable to also my 5.8X Jubilee, so it really has a very present mid-range. So I feel like that part you're not going to be let down. It's really in the treble where it gets interesting. I feel like you essentially get like half of your treble, I guess. You get a lot of the lower treble, so everything from like 1 to like, you know, 5K, you get a lot of that, so it feels really fulfilled, very good. However, when you get to the higher regions around like the 6 to like the 8K on this headphone, the treble just kind of falls off a cliff, and you kind of feel like you're kind of grasping for air. You kind of want some of that treble up there. It feels a little bit dull, a little bit restrained up there. And I feel like that's probably the greatest, I guess, weakness of this headphone, is you'll feel a little less treble, but at the same time, it has a benefit of just never going to be fatiguing, never going to be overly bright in that region. And so it's going to be very calm, easy to listen to headphone, and really you still get the fun bass and really good kind of mid-range vocals. Male, female vocals still come across very well in the mid-range and the lower treble. It's just I feel like the last finishing up of those notes and some, you know, some of the string instruments as well that are playing high regions do just sound a little bit kind of dull and a little bit muted with the type of tuning that it has. The other thing I have to talk about is actually the fit of this headphone. So this headphone, obviously, like, because it has those front firing, essentially speaker type of presentation, right? When you put it on, it honestly kind of has a lot of variations on how you put it on your head. So if you put it too far in the back, you're not going to get that much treble. I actually tend to move the headphone closer to the driver, and when I do, I actually get a better kind of more treble, a little bit brighter sound, and the sound quality sounds a lot better, and then the imaging for me as well increases as well as I get closer to the driver. So for me, I find that you have to play with the position of this headphone to get the optimal sound properties out of it. On that note, let's talk about soundstage and imaging. So this thing does have what people call the speaker-like presentation, right? Because it has those speakers in front, it pretty much mimics like speaker positioning. Because if you think about most headphones are like the Sennheiser, right? They kind of sit on the side of your ear. They're not really angled drivers, so they're kind of shooting your ear like this. But because these are front firing, they're kind of like real speakers when you're kind of experiencing it when you're watching TV, right? Or let's say you're at a concert, the speakers are in front of you, you're watching the show, or you're going to like, you know, an orchestra show, you know, everything's in front of you and you're experiencing, right? So a lot of the sounds are, you kind of get used to it being played from in front of you. And I feel like this emulates that a lot better than any headphone I've ever used because of those angled drivers. Now, angled drivers aren't like a new thing. Like I have this headphone right here. This is the PC3X by Drop. and EPOS, which used to be like an old Sennheiser brand as well. But this headphone actually has angled drivers. So if I just take this out, you can see that this driver is angled a little bit. You can see the back and the front, and it kind of turns itself to give you a little bit better forward image placement. Now, obviously this is as extreme degree as it is on the Grell headphone, but yeah, there is angled drivers and they do exist. I mean, I have other headphones like the EPOS H6 Pro. This one actually is the same driver as the drop one, but this one actually has angled drivers, and it's angled even more, I think, than the actual PC38X. But at the same time, it's still not giving me the same angle that this headphone is. So I feel like this kind of took angled drivers to a whole new like degree. And really, I feel like that's what giving this headphone just the speaker-like presentation, because it's in front of you. Now, the other thing is the soundstage, right? Because the drivers are placed a little further from you, you actually get a little bit bigger of a soundstage, and it feels a little bit more natural like speakers. So I feel like it does, do a really good job. However, it's still not the same as like you putting the speaker like far away from you, because the further the speaker is, the bigger it's going to sound, the further it's going to sound, right? These are still like closer to your ears, but it still gives you that speaker like type of sound, if you know what I'm talking about. And so let's do some comparisons with some of my, I guess, drop headphones. I think I bought way too many, to be honest. But we have obviously the Grell compared to, let's say, the PC38X. Honestly, this headphone driver just cannot compete with these on the table. This thing has noticeably the most, I guess, basic driver. It doesn't sound as detailed as these ones do, so they get outperformed pretty handily. But I would say the tuning on this is much more normal and neutral and natural, I guess, sounding on the PC38X compared to this, in the sense of it has just a better treble balance, but it doesn't have the same kind of low end punch that this headphone has. And then if you move to the 5.8X, I feel like the 5.8X really compares pretty well to this headphone. Like, this headphone has really good detail, but it doesn't have the same kind of dynamic or like movie theater like type of, I guess, movement of air. You don't really feel the air as much and the notes as much with this headphone as compared to the drop. But this one does have a more, I guess, natural treble type of response. So it does sound a little bit better for a lot of the voices, female voices especially up there in treble, but the bass is just definitely not as impactful or fun as this headphone at all. And I would say the Grell headphone also just kind of outcompetes it in the sense of detail. I think the driver is just more detailed and more, I guess, dynamic sounding. So it's a much more fun type of sound for sure. And it's more like consumer sound. This is more like hardcore audiophile or, traditional audiophile type of sound. And then for the last comparison, we have the Drop Signature X. This headphone is honestly just like a Bassheads headphone. That's basically what I called it when I reviewed it. And this headphone honestly is almost like a Bassheads headphone, almost, because it doesn't have that much treble. It has a lot of bass, but it definitely has better kind of treble and overall just brighter type of sound in comparison to the Signature X. I also feel like the bass has better texture, honestly, better detail overall than even the Signature X, but the Signature X definitely has a bigger mid-bass boost if that's what you're looking for, and it has a darker type of sound in the treble than even the drop Grell. But overall, like, if I had to choose one of these drop headphones, I would definitely buy the Grell. I feel like it definitely encapsulates just a lot of fun, a lot of immersion into the music. I feel like if I went back and was just purchase one headphone, I'd probably buy this one, to be honest. This one or the Sennheiser HD58X is also a good choice if you don't like as much bass. But yeah, so in conclusion, I think the OAE1 by Drop and by, I guess, Axel Grell is a really, really good headphone if you're looking for that fun, engaging type of sound and you don't mind a little bit less treble on this. I think it will do really well. I mean, honestly, the most popular headphone that they had, which is the 6X6, I think they sold almost like 200,000 of those. Doesn't even have that much treble to begin with either. It is also a slightly dark type of headphone. A lot of people say it has the Sennheiser veil. I would say this one kind of has that too. But honestly, this one has just a much more fun presentation. I actually expect this headphone to be more popular because it has just a lot more bass, that a lot more just average consumers, average people want to hear. And so I feel like that aspect of this headphone being just so much fun would probably be better than a lot of other audiophile headphones, because a lot of people try a lot of the audiophile headphones and they go like, where's the bass? Like I don't hear any bass, right? And then the audio files come like, oh, you're used to like bloated bass. But yeah, I think this is, you know, bassy headphone that a audiophile like Axel Grell tuned this to have what he thinks is a good proper bass level. And I honestly agree with him. This is a really good bass level and I enjoy it. Anyways, I hope you guys like this video. Please like and subscribe down below. Helps my videos out and I'll see you guys in the next video.